Hello there. The British Prime Minister has been facing harsh criticism for weeks now, including from within her own ranks. Leading Tories now reportedly want to ask Truss to resign already. According to a report in the London newspaper The Times, opposition to British Prime Minister Liz Truss is increasing in the Conservative Party, and I'm not surprised. Leading Tories would discuss replacing the Prime Minister after just over a month in office, the newspaper wrote. There are considerations to set up a joint candidate. A pact between ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak and Tory politician Penny Mordaunt is also possible, the Times reported, citing senior party members. Both had failed in the internal competition for party leadership because of Truss. A so-called Council of Elders made up of dozens of former cabinet members is ready to ask Truss to give up. The Prime Minister has also been facing harsh criticism from within her own ranks for weeks. The reason for this is the Chancellor of the Exchequer Kwasi Kwarteng's budget, which was only financed with debt and which triggered severe market turbulence. After fierce protests, including from leading Tories, Truss and Kwarteng reversed the abolition of the top tax rate. Now another U-turn is likely. As the newspaper Guardian wrote, Truss and Kwarteng do not want to withdraw the significant increase in corporate tax planned for April. The Prime Minister had repeatedly stressed that the increase from 19 to 25% decided by her predecessor Boris Johnson would be cancelled. The markets reacted positively, but Truss seems to be getting nowhere with voters. In a survey by the opinion research institute YouGov for The Times, 50% were in favor of putting Truss out the door. Only 9% supported the head of government, which is really a low compared to her predecessors. Time is running out now for Liz Truss government. Until yesterday, the Bank of England was still shielding them from the extreme market reactions unleashed by Truss Chancellor of the Exchequer Kwasi Kwarteng when he unveiled his tax program. The pound fell as a result and bond market yields rose, both signals that investors were skeptical of the proposals. Central Bank Chief Andrew Bailey stepped in and had British bonds bought also to protect pension funds from difficulties. But the central bank no longer wants to be accused of protecting the government from the displeasure of the financial markets. The interventions therefore ended now. The pressure on Truss and Kwarteng is therefore increasing to change the controversial program, or even tilt it. On October 31st, Kwarteng intends to present his complete budget program. At the same time, the Office for Budget Management, or OBR, should approve its calculations. So there are only 2 weeks left to correct the project in such a way that the fiscal policy rules of the UK are observed and the financial markets are reassured. The rules state that debt as a percentage of gross domestic product should fall in the third year after the announcement. Kwarteng has already pushed this deadline back to 5 years. At the same time, the budget program should make a positive contribution to the national budget in the third year after its announcement. How exactly this is supposed to happen has not yet been explained by Kwarteng. The demands for a U-turn reach Truss not only from the financial markets but also from within her own ranks. Fearing that the Conservative Party could lose the next election, parliamentarians have urged them to revise their program of massive tax cuts. British media report that the group is already considering behind the scenes when and how Truss could be replaced by someone who understands political reality better and who can unite MPs behind him as a single candidate. It is true that a prime minister cannot formally be overthrown by a vote of no confidence for a year after taking power, but faction members believe that rule can be changed at any time. Johnson was talking about this already. If that happens, it only takes a few hours and the threshold is reached. That's what MPs threatened on Wednesday evening. And opposition leader Keir Starmer has urged Labour to prepare for a general election. Given the state of the Tories, it could come at any time, although I don't believe that the Tories are that stupid. Several Conservative MPs also fear that the dismissal of Chancellor Kwarteng, who is responsible for the tax cut program, is inevitable. The atmosphere on Wednesday evening, when Truss had to face the faction committee, the 1922 committee, was below everything, was reported by participants. Truss did not understand how serious the situation on the financial markets was, could hardly answer a question, and did not recognize the explosive nature of the situation. She has lost all credibility. That's how the Times quoted one of those present as saying. There has never been a worse performance by a Prime Minister before the 1922 committee. Truss has been accused of jeopardizing the party's conservative values and the achievements of the Tories in recent years. The party's reputation as a force traditionally responsible for fiscal policy is at risk. And not only that. The energy package presented by her and her Chancellor of the Exchequer cost £60 billion plus the tax cuts of £43 billion that do not pay off, especially since Truss initially only emphasized that they should be financed through further debt. The resulting increase in loan and mortgage interest rates in the country is now worrying millions of homeowners and, of course, small business owners. A constituency that the Conservative Party could otherwise count on is being pushed into the arms of Labour. It will therefore be crucial how Truss and Kwarteng adapt their new programme. Kwarteng had initially rejected the usual review of his proposals by the Independent Office for Budget Management. The Treasury and the opposition now have an initial assessment of the office, but according to reports from the British media, it doesn't pay off. This is risky as the financial markets closely follow the OBR's pronouncements. The Economic Research Institute, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, or IFS, calculated on Tuesday that the government would have to impose spending cuts of £60 billion if it wanted to stick to the programme of tax cuts. After years of extreme austerity programs, it can hardly afford that, especially since the British authorities need more funds to deal with the consequences of corona lockdowns and Brexit. The healthcare sector and the court system must be excluded from cuts anyway. Nevertheless, Truss stressed unmoved on Wednesday before Parliament, "Of course we will not cut spending." Opposition leader Keir Starmer countered with a nod to the financial markets, which are now listening carefully. Another savings opportunity is to cut back on planned infrastructure investments, but that would contradict the stated goal of the levelling up, which is to promote disadvantaged areas in the country. And the third point would be deregulation. Truss has said she will enact so many supply-side reforms that this alone will add significantly to growth. But with the current opposition from MPs, Truss cannot push through many of these deregulations and reforms in the House of Commons. And Economics Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg's plan to abolish the 48-hour week from the EU Temporary Work Directive is considered to have failed. And suddenly allowing fracking also met with resistance from numerous MPs. The deletion of environmental regulations as well. In addition, deregulation, such as the amendment or abolition of former EU regulations, takes time, and that's time that Truss does not have. It also remains questionable whether the OBR would even take such further deregulations into account in budget calculations. And that leaves the tax cuts. And that's exactly where the members of the parliamentary group are calling for a rethink. The abolition of the maximum tax rate of 45% has already had to be reversed by Kwarteng. Experts in the Treasury are now considering whether Kwarteng should also give way on corporate income tax, as I said. His predecessor, as I mentioned before, wanted to increase the tax from 19 to 25, and Kwarteng did not want to participate in this increase. Now it's said that a gradual increase might be a compromise. It also being considered whether the reduction in the property tax rate from 20 to 19% announced by Kwarteng could be delayed. With the so-called windfall tax, Truss has already allowed a reversal maneuver. Contrary to her promises, power plants that produce electricity from renewable energies are prescribed a price cap. The only problem is that the energy and tax cuts programs and the funding gap of them with more than £100 billion is so huge that small adjustments can hardly do it. However, a decision is not expected to be made until Kwarteng returns from Washington after this weekend and the IMF and World Bank meeting. Giving in would certainly weaken Truss in Kwarteng politically considerably, although, according to The Economist, that's hardly possible anymore. Truss lost control of power in the British government after just 7 days, given it about the shelf life of a lettuce. That's how the magazine described it, and they are quite right. She has no real authority anymore. I thought Boris Johnson was world champion in messing up, but he lost that title just 7 days after Liz Truss got into office, and that is really an achievement. You first have to do that. As you still can hear, you will not get another video today. As I promised, I will try from next week to get to the new program, but today it will still be a one video day, and so I'll see you tomorrow. I will be back.